Hi, and welcome to TRG and Zebra's joint Taco Bout series. Here today, we are talking about restaurant technology trends. And through that, we're going to have a great presentation with Adam Jadich with TRG and Mark Delaney with Zebra. Before we get started, I do have a couple of housekeeping notes. First and foremost, we will be asking that if you have questions, please put them in the chat functions, as all of your mics will be muted throughout the presentation. We'll do our best to get through all of those questions. Rest assured, if we don't, we will have follow-ups with you individually by our presenters. So ask away, and we'll get started here. All right. First of all, our Taco Bout topics. We've got leading industry trends, line busting. We also want to talk through curbside pickup, loyalty card scanning, and we also have a little teaser on our next Taco Bout series here coming up in June. So before we get into our topics, I do want to let our presenters do an introduction. So Adam, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about TRG?
Yeah, thanks, Amber. My name's Adam Jadich, and I'm the Director of Retail and Hospitality Solutions here at TRG. I've been with the organization 12 years now, and have been a part of a lot of growth and a lot of great things that have happened here. So just a high level about TRG. So TRG, we're an end-to-end hardware managed service provider, really focusing on being a single source for all your point of sale and mobility needs. Really with a comprehensive suite of life cycle management products and solutions, again, really geared to be an extension of your IT team and make the transition into different technology solutions easier for your group. So we appreciate everybody joining us today, and definitely look forward to talk with Mark and Amber about this, as it's exciting times and technology is driving a lot of the changes that are coming with it. So thank you, Amber.
Perfect. And Mark, would you like to introduce yourself? And Adam, thanks for introducing me, because I, as the moderator, forgot to, was jumping right into the topic, but I am Amber Kegley, and I'll be joining you guys, but rest assured that these Adam and Mark here are the experts. So Mark, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Mark Delaney with Zebra Technologies. I'm what's called an industry principal, so I cover the retail and hospitality verticals. Essentially what that means is I have the privilege of talking with our large customers in these areas, so sort of monitoring industry trends, evaluating emerging technologies in this space. In addition to our technology, we're also actively investing in other companies with the goal of bringing more comprehensive solutions to our customers. My background prior to Zebra spans, consulting, analytics. I started in the CPG space, so all sorts of different activities in my background. But it's great to be here today. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. So we do want to talk a little bit about leading industry concerns. I mean, the last 18 months has been a trying time for a lot of companies, but it's really impacted the restaurant market, and it's driven some new technology changes and advancements, and there's a lot going on there. Can you talk us through, Mark, some of the different challenges and concerns that restaurants are facing today?
Yeah, a lot going on is an understatement right now. There's a lot of industry concerns right now. I mean, labor or the lack thereof, right? I mean, there's lots of conflicting data that we've seen over the last couple of weeks, right? Retailers and operators that I talk to specifically, are constantly telling me that it's incredibly hard for them to get labor right now, despite what some of the numbers are indicating. So, not sure what role, stimulus and other things play here, but certainly there's a lot of concern that as the businesses reopen and customers continue to return, that operator is going to have enough staff to deliver the service they want to. So that's that area. Safety, I mean, gosh, cleanliness, constantly shifting CDC guidelines. I mean, this is where, I really have to tip my hat to the operators out there, because they've done a tremendous job, doing things in days and weeks that normally would have taken months and years to do to ensure that staff and customers are safe, right? So, I mean, we'll talk a little bit more in a few minutes about that, but I think you're going to start to see safety become part of an operator's branding going forward. Communication, right? Ordering and receiving food for customers, that whole process is changing. And here's where, workflows like Curbside have really challenged staff, right, as being able to effectively manage or communicate amongst each other, right? And with customers that are arriving to pick up orders, right? It's an area that we're doing a lot of work right now at Zebra, and it just takes a lot of work to pull it off effectively and keep customers happy. And then obviously the economic impact has been tremendous, right? I think hopefully we're at a pivotal point right now where finally customers are, feeling more comfortable returning to retail, returning to QSR, et cetera. But, in fact, I think there's actually a lot of pent up demand, right? And I think evidence of that, for example, is you see packed planes from where I live in New York to, vacation destinations like Florida and, the Bahamas and things like that. But I think the key to the recovery is going to be ensuring that the customers are comfortable coming back to your location.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how things get back to normal. I, for one, cannot wait to start traveling more. So I don't know about you guys, but I say that, and I'm sure we'll all be sick of it soon enough again. So looking forward to it. Well, thank you again, Mark and Adam, for joining us. So we'll continue in the conversation and talk through line busting. Adam, do you want to touch on this one?
Yeah, no, line busting is absolutely something that has spawned out, obviously, over the last 12 months, more so than ever, right? There's studies that are out there right now that basically illustrate the fact that a line busting solution can double the amount of cars that can go through a drive-through or curbside pickup type of application, right? So when we say line busting, what we're talking about is basically a staff-held device, right, which is optimized for increasing the amount of throughput through a drive-through lane, through an order process, and everything else, right? So it creates a number of different things for your customer experience, right? Number one, it really drives to the fact that the customer experience is good. We've all been around those drive-through lines that you sit there, but you know that you've only got 10 cars in front of you, but you know you're going to be there for 20 minutes because it's a slow line, right? And we've also seen the instances where you've got those systems that have it down to a science where it's wrapped around the building, but you know the max that you're going to be there is 15 minutes, right? So those encourage not only people to come through the QSR and utilize that service, but also to repeat business, right? Which is encouraging people to come back. So the other thing that it creates too is a lot of these line busting solutions now, they have payment tied to them, right? So not only are you able to take somebody's order, service them faster, while they're in the line and obviously, go back through it, but you also take a payment at that time too, right? Your drive off rate is going to be far less when you take a payment early on in the order process, as opposed to them having to wait to put that order through. So line busting technology, it's out there, and there's a lot of great things that are happening with it. But at the end of the day, these things are spawning out mainly because of the fact that customer experience is really demanding it, right? No matter if you're talking restaurant or you're talking retail or anything in between, customers are demanding a better experience, or they're going to go elsewhere, right? And that's really what, especially QSRs in these changing times, are really going after.
Yeah, I think a few things I would add to that, and I completely support what Adam just said, is I think certainly in the mobile POS space, you're going to see a lot of advancements over the next year or so in that area. It's something that we're focused on, and also a lot of our partners are focused on. I think rugged is another area, right? I mean, if you see some of that line busting that's being done at drive-throughs and things like that, you don't want to be standing out there with your iPhone necessarily, right? Because that falls to concrete. That's not going to end well, right? So I think emphasis on rugged. And I think the other thing is, drive-throughs, right? I think, the interesting thing about drive-throughs is now you're seeing increased interest in the convenience space as well, right? Even prior to the pandemic, you saw operators out there trialing drive-throughs in the convenience space. So I think the interesting thing in the industry over the next few years is I think you're going to see a little bit of a blurring of the line between QSRs and convenience, right? Because if you think about it, we on this call may make the distinction between those two groups, right? But a customer is just saying, hey, I got the kids in the back seat. I just got back from soccer practice. I just need a healthy, quick option to satisfy those kids. So they're not really going to make a distinction between a Wawa and whatever, right? I mean, they're just going to say, hey, I need quick, healthy food. So I think it's going to be interesting in the next few years to see how that plays out, because both of those groups are really heavily invested in drive-throughs. And I just think the consumer really doesn't make much of a distinction between the two anymore.
Yeah, and we actually had two questions that have come in on this topic that I think we definitely right now at least have some time to get to. So one, what are the biggest challenges you're seeing with line busting? And Mark, I'm going to lob that one over to you if you don't mind to answer that one.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think one is just throughput, right? I mean, what we've seen as a result of the pandemic is folks just still aren't comfortable going back inside to allow these operators, right? So it's really just a legacy thing. It's no fault of the operators. They never designed the drive-throughs, to be able to handle that kind of throughput. So now you see some of the operators doing 2-lane drive-throughs, right? And going back to what Adam mentioned, line busting becomes incredibly important. So when you can see these employees going out to meet you at your car, so that, if you have questions about the menu, or you have questions about payment, or you have questions about what meal combinations you can order, right, the faster they can get those questions resolved while the customer is still in line, right, the faster it is for everyone sitting in that line. So, to his example, 15 minutes turns into 5 minutes, which becomes a much better customer experience, and it makes sure that that customer comes back. But that's a challenge. I mean, there's a lot of, there's a lot of logistics behind that people tend to gloss over in terms of workflows and things like that.
Okay. And I'd add to that too. I agree 100% with what Mark's saying. But also the management of the technology once it's out there too is we've seen become a big challenge for a lot of IT departments, right? And what I mean by that is an IT department is now tasked with not only having to figure out, what are the mobile technologies that we're going to put out there, but now I got to manage that too, right? I got more devices that are out in a restaurant, and more devices that can get lost, stolen, broken. I've got to have a support model that really goes with it. So we've seen a lot of our mobile device management programs get wrapped around that kind of stuff because of the fact that it's logistically it's a little bit more difficult to manage that stuff once it becomes mobile. Another issue that I've actually quite seen, right? So as you're going outside the four walls, all of these mobile devices need to have Wi-Fi connection to them, right? And a lot of the infrastructures that are out there with the QSR is really geared around inside the four walls. So there's been some obstacles now that you have people walking around the building, depending on how far they're going to go, to make sure that their wireless infrastructures are up to the capabilities that those devices need in order to be able to take those orders real time, get that information to the kitchen so that they can deliver the product by the time they get around there. So those are a couple things I've seen.
Yeah, and around those, managing the devices too, Adam. And one thing just from a TRG standpoint, and it's going to be my selfish plug here, but that's something that certainly our sales team are well versed in. So if they're having issues and concerns, it's definitely worth reaching out or just learning more and exploring it, because there's a ton of options out there that I think a lot of restaurant people if you're managers or owners, they're just not aware of it. Some of the new technologies and new solutions available that could really help them and be beneficial. There was one last question here around kiosks. Adam, what are you seeing as results around kiosks and how they're being implemented in the restaurants and part of line busting?
Yeah, no, kiosk technology, that's something that's coming pretty big with anything QSR related, right? And it hits a couple of major issues that the QSR organizations have to deal with, one of which is labor costs, right? Number one, obviously making that self-service kiosk at the point of entry, making it an easy way for a customer to engage, doesn't necessarily have to deal with somebody at the counter, put their order through. Some of the other things that studies have shown is that people are more likely to purchase 15 to 25% more in the upsell value based off of interacting with a kiosk as opposed to actual interaction with another human being when putting an order through. So a couple of big opportunities there. One, it makes it easier for the customer, right? It's an easy way for them to get in there, obviously avoid lines, offer more spaces for them to actually be able to put orders through, right? And then on top of that, increase the basket size or the order size that's going to come through, for that particular order. So again, those are some big things that we're seeing, but we definitely think that kiosks are a great tool that is being pushed and being installed at a lot of QSRs that are out there. So
awesome. Great, curbside pickup. So what do we got from a curbside pickup standpoint? Adam, do you want to continue kind of on the conversation here? And Mark, feel free to chime in. We'd love to get your thoughts and opinions on it as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, so curbside pickup, it's absolutely taken off, and a lot of the driving force behind the curbside pickup is the delivery apps that have become so prevalent out there in the industry, right? The DoorDashes, the Uber Eats, those applications that allow people to be able to order something and have it dropped off at the door within 30 to 40 minutes, right? There's a lot of challenges that come from a curbside pickup, right? There's examples of very good, curbside pickup models and very, very bad ones, right? And there's a lot of different, areas to be successful or fail at it, right? And it starts with the order entry, right? Is the application integrated in well with how the customer interacts and actually puts the order through, right? So does it have the full menu? Does it have all the items needed? Does it have things that are actually on the menu with the QSR, right? So again, that starts with the process is the order entry, right? When the driver shows up, has that order been sitting, completed for 30 minutes, and then you have a cold meal that you dig into, which nobody likes, right? That's
Not
a
at
customer
all.
experience that nobody wants to have
It
to deal with,
happened to
right?
me last night. Terrible.
Yep. And then the delay time, right? So it's flip side of that. So it's got to be timed up perfectly. You've got to have your systems integrated, right? So your point of sale system has to be integrated with the order app, whether it's an outside third party app or your internal app where they're interacting with. Because otherwise, the flip side of that is if the order isn't done or you hadn't received it, then you've got somebody sitting there for 15, 20 minutes while something is being prepared, which nobody wants to see either. So again, there's a lot of complexities that go around it, but the ones that work really, really well are really, really good. And that really encourages the customers to come back again, right? The amount of curbside pickup orders in the past 12 months is drastically through the roof, and the amount of people that have utilized it compared to pre-pandemic levels has been very, very high as well. So again, it's something that's here, that's to stay, and again, it's become a way of life. Now, one of the things we're starting to see is some of the stores of the future that some of the major big QSRs are pushing out actually has less seating capacity that they're putting in these stores, right? And their model is geared more towards bigger drive-through lines, more curbside pickup areas, and a different model to be able to service this. So it's definitely something that's here. It's customer driven, just like everything. We want something now and fast, right? As opposed to having to wait for something. So again, it's kind of where this industry is trending and heading towards.
Yeah, and I would just, add to that by drawing an analogy, right? So if you think about a grocery store, for example, right? So I was talking to a grocery store executive just earlier this week, and he made a comment that was sort of profound when I thought about it. He's like, Mark, I'm never going to be able to convince a customer to drag a cart into my store and wrestle a case of bottled water off the shelf and wrestle it out to their car. It's just not going to happen because we've spent the last year, doing that for them for free, right? So so they're starting to redesign their stores around sort of half distribution center, half shopping experience. And I think actually for the QSRs, there's a corollary there, right? Because what Adam just mentioned is absolutely right. A lot of these customers have gotten used to this curbside option, and the ones that have gotten it right are seeing a lot of potential from it. I mean, go back to my soccer example. It's not that many years ago that I was dragging young kids around in the back seat, and it's just not fun. Talk about digging into a cold meal. It's also not fun dragging kids into a QSR and standing in line and making sure they're not touching stuff and all that good stuff. So I think there's this has a lot of sticking power going forward, and the ones that do it well, I think will get the benefit of it. And the only other thing I would add is this is actually going back to Adam's comment about devices and having to manage them. So we're actually seeing a trend in devices from orders, especially within this space with wide area network connectivity. So, cellular connections, because in some cases their Wi-Fi just isn't capable of going beyond, big brick walls and things like that. So we are seeing customers who are taking things like tablets, whatever, and then and actually having a cellular connection and giving those associates those devices, so that again that experience at the curbside is flawless, which is exactly what a customer deserves these days.
Yeah, we did have another question that came in. We had a couple, but the one I think that will really hit home for a lot of us too is, can you guys give us an example of what a good model versus bad model around curbside pickup is?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start with a very good curbside pickup model, right? You sign into the app. It's a store-owned app, right? It gives you an estimate as to how long it's going to take to complete, right? With a timeline that goes along with it. It then notifies you when that order is complete, so that you can come and pick it up from there. There's apps that are out there as well that allow you to be able to click on it when you arrive. So it sends notification into the store themselves, so that they're able to pick your order and then bring it out to you in a speedy manner, right? So again, it sounds simple, but there's a lot of systems that have to be connected in order for all that to work seamlessly like it needs to. And to the customer, it's just too easy, right? And those are the things that a lot of people are looking forward to, just to streamline things and make things simple in their lives,
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. And I would just add, the luxury of being a market leader is that we have a lot of partners, like what Adam just mentioned, that are very happy to work with ourselves and folks like yourselves. So, this is 2021, right? There's no reason why you can't know that, Mark is pulling up. He just pulled into space number 3. Mark drives X car, right? So, it should be it should be like any good loyalty program, which I know we're going to get into, but any good loyalty program sort of, rewards a customer for, constantly patronizing that QSR or that, right, or that retailer. And that's exactly the relationship you want to build around curbside. And the more layers of integration you build into it to make it more seamless for the customer, right, the more often that, that QSR is going to be the go-to for that particular customer.
Yeah. And I think technology is absolutely driving all that too. And without those integrations, you have to solve that problem with more head count, right? The more head count there is, the more difficult it is to manage and everything else. So, and we all know the challenges that are around that in today's day. So, but again, one of those areas doesn't succeed. It's a poor experience for the customer, and that's what obviously what spawns repeat business.
Yeah, and I can tell you from a frequent shopper and frequent use of a couple different ones. I'll throw a couple to my personal favorites. This is not a plug by any means, but a Starbucks and Chipotle. They got to make it easy.
Mhm.
But those loyalty points, they keep me coming back, and I have a big family, so makes it easy when I get the free stuff tied in. I won't lie. But that actually segues us into the next topic of conversation here with loyalty card scanning. And again, if you don't have, or if we did not get to your questions, I should say, and we don't have enough time to get to them at the end, we will respond back to you. I just want to make sure there's a few questions coming in, and rest assured we will get to those. So Mark, do you mind taking us through loyalty card scanning and some of the different technology trends you're seeing there?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, this is an area that, you may have to drag me off my soapbox a little bit, but, I think this is an area with enormous opportunity and upside right now. I mean, if you think about it just as a consumer yourself, right? Loyalties over the last year or so have been shattered, right? So, because of closures, because of product shortages, right? Consumers, right? And we have, I'm sure we all have stories about this, right? Have been forced to try other brands, right? Have been forced to change their purchasing habits overall. So, I would say that if an operator today doesn't have a loyalty program, they should be standing one up now, right? And if they already have one, they need to better leverage all the data coming off of that, right? I mean, I can tell you, just given my analytics background, with many different retailers, right? These retailers and operators are sitting in some cases on a wealth of data, but they aren't doing much with it, right? And that happens across most verticals. I mean, even the most sophisticated operators in the grocery space, it happens to them as well. So I think that's why you're starting to see these larger operators investing in folks with like data science backgrounds, right? When we acquired Profitect, we brought that capability in house, and being able to, leverage machine learning and AI against loyalty data that can uncover trends, before they result in lost customers, right? Because we live in a world now where online influencers, right, can change customer behaviors. So it becomes critical to mine that loyalty data for insights. I mean, can you tell, for instance, is a certain demographic suddenly moving off a certain offering on the menu, right? Or have you not seen a certain demographic in your location in a certain time period, right? All of these insights can allow operators to make adjustments quickly and on the fly, right? Versus waiting so long that the customer is lost forever. I mean, it's a very hot area right now, and with loyalty shattered, this is an outstanding time for some of these operators to gain share.
Mark, can you talk through, the past, I mentioned when we started off here, the 12 to 18 months, right? Things have just changed for various reasons, right?
Yep.
Yes, we went through a pandemic, but outside of that, all these new trends that emerged from that. What are you really seeing as regards to what's changed, and where do you see it going even into the future?
Yeah. I mean, it may sound overly dramatic, but I really believe that we're going to look back at this point in time, and this will have changed. What we've gone through for the last 12 to 18 months is going to fundamentally change the model going forward, right? This is going to be sort of like the advent of Amazon on e-commerce, right? It's going to be that significant because I think, just as consumers ourselves, I'm sure we could rattle off a number of changes that we've made fundamentally to the way that we shop, the way that we interact with QSRs and retailers, right? And I think that that change has a lot of sticking power to it, right? And I think, as a result of loyalties being shattered somewhat as a result of our changing to other brands and other operators and saying, hey, I never thought about changing from this operator to the other operator, and I like it. I think that's got big implications, can't speak, to to both operators and to consumers, the way we just live our lives, so to speak, going forward. So I do think there's going to be a lot of innovation within this space over the next 12 to 18 months. And I think if you're not already thinking about innovating, thinking about fundamental change, then unfortunately there's a good chance you're not going to be around in the next 12 to 18 months.
I agree wholeheartedly with everything Mark just said there. It's changing. It's changing drastically, and it has changed. And there's no doubt that the people that are on the forefront of that are going to be, the ones that are around for a long time, right? And if you really think about the last 12 months, right, there was a complete industry that was devastated by the pandemic, yet there was a ton of growth within the QSR model, right? And that speaks a lot to how they innovated and how they really capitalized on the advantages that they had and really went through it. But some of the big changes that I see coming too is less personnel to run the stores, right? There's models already that are out. I've seen out in California for certain major QSR restaurants that are basically, you either order on a phone via app, or there's a kiosk at the station, which allows you to put an order, and when you get there, and it's 100% pickup, right? There may be places to sit and eat, but it's 100% pickup order, and there is nobody that's actually taking orders at the actual counter itself. And it's also, speaking to the loyalty, it's also tying the payments into the loyalty system to go along with it. So utilizing your Apple Pays, your PayPals, your Google Pays, in order to be able to get that loyalty program information in there, but also tie that to a payment system that goes along with it. But there's no doubt that this thing is changing, and it's changing in a drastic way, and it's very exciting times because being within the technology industry, it's very, very encouraging to see this kind of stuff, and technology is really driving a lot of those changes that are coming from it. So.
I would say exciting and exhausting all at the same time, right?
Yeah, very, very true. I will second that.
Yeah, but I would just add, I think we need to give credit to these operators, especially the good ones out there, because the amount of change that has been thrown at them in the last 12, 18 months is just enormous. And I talked to an executive recently, and he said, if you had told me 3 years ago that this is what I would need to do in the course of a year, I would have said I need a $3 million budget and 30 people. And guess what? I didn't have either one, and we still got it done. So now I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing for him going forward, but it's just incredible the amount of change that they've had to adjust with, or deal with and adjust on the fly. And I think to Adam's point, the strong ones are going to emerge very strong and stronger going forward. And unfortunately, we may see some weak ones fall to the wayside.
Absolutely. And I know we're just about up on time, here, but I do have one thing early on, Mark, you mentioned food safety. What are you seeing from a technology standpoint around food safety? Do you mind going into that here? We have a couple minutes to spare. I think just to touch on that would be really beneficial to everyone that's tuned in.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's a few different technologies that are actually starting to crop up to address this. One of them is RFID, and you wouldn't think about RFID traditionally within the QSR space. But if you think about the idea of, a case of chicken coming to an operator's back door, right, and being loaded into a cooler, you always want to make sure, last in, first out, right, because you want to make sure the customer has the freshest product possible. Well, RFID, replaces pen and paper, and it does it in a fairly, cost-efficient manner, and it makes it very easy for the operator quickly to do a scan of their back room and know which inventory they need to move to the front and get out to the floor faster, instead of doing it via pen and paper, which to Adam's point, they're not getting any more labor. Labor is becoming much more scarce and more costly. All right, so that's one technology to address it. And the other one is simple things like labels, right? I mean, there's been a lot of advancements in labeling over the past few years. It's not that exciting necessarily, but you can actually see it via the label, as a case of product or something in the cooler either changes temperature up or down, and could create a food safety issue. So I think there's a few technologies that have certainly come to the top that address food safety over the last year or two that I think you're going to see more and more operators looking into.
That's great. Thank you so much. Again, we are up on our time here, just about at least, but I do want to thank you, Mark, Adam, for taking the time to talk about restaurant tech trends with us today. A couple additional notes to touch base on here real quick. If you did attend you do receive the Grubhub lunch gift card. Those will be sent to you within 2 business days, so be on the lookout for that. And we do have a next upcoming webinar going to be featured on June 29th, so join us for that Taco Bout series. And thank you all for joining today. We appreciate it and look forward to working with you. And if you did have questions that we weren't able to get to, we will be following up with you directly. So have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.